I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, because what I'm about to tell you will show you that sometimes the people who throw you away are the same ones who come crawling back when they need you. When my son Eugene stood at my penthouse door 6 months after throwing me out like garbage, his face went white as a sheet. "Mom," he whispered, staring past me at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. How is this possible?" I smiled. A real smile. The kind that comes from power, not politeness. "Come in, Eugene," I said. "We have so much to talk about." But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that moment felt so sweet, you need to know where I started. You need to know what they did to me. My name is Melissa Bennett. I'm 66 years old, and for 45 years I was the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who sacrificed everything and asked for nothing in return. I married Benjamin James Bennett on June 8, 1979, when I was 21 years old. He was 23, fresh out of the University of Washington with a degree in civil engineering and dreams bigger than our tiny Seattle apartment on Capitol Hill. We built our life together at 847 Oakwood Drive in the Greenwood neighborhood. A modest 3-bedroom house with a maple tree in the front yard and a garden out back where I grew tomatoes every summer. Benjamin worked for the city's Department of Transportation for 38 years. Good benefits, steady paycheck. Nothing fancy, but we never went hungry. I stayed home, raised our son Eugene, kept the house spotless, cooked every meal from scratch. I did the bookkeeping, paid the bills on time every single month, managed every detail of our domestic life. People always said I was lucky to have Benjamin. He was handsome in that quiet, dependable way. Dark hair that grayed at the temples, kind eyes, strong hands that could fix anything. What they didn't say was that Benjamin was lucky to have me, but I never needed them to say it. I knew my worth even if I kept it quiet. Eugene was born on March 15, 1982 at Swedish Medical Center. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes. From the moment they placed him in my arms, I knew my life would never be the same. I was right, but not in the way I imagined. I raised that boy with every ounce of love I had. I stayed up all night when he had croup at age 4, holding him in the steamy bathroom while Benjamin slept. I helped him with every science project, drove him to every soccer practice at Woodland Park, attended every parent-teacher conference at Roosevelt High School. When he graduated in 2000, I cried harder than anyone in that auditorium. He was my world, my everything, the reason I woke up every morning with purpose. And then 43 years later, he threw me away. Benjamin died of a massive heart attack on January 15, 2024 at the age of 67. It was a Tuesday, gray and drizzling the way Seattle Januaries always are. He'd been in the garage working on the lawnmower, getting it ready for spring. I was inside making pot roast for dinner, his favorite. Extra carrots the way he liked. I heard a sound. A crash. Something heavy hitting the concrete floor. "Benjamin?" I called out. No answer. I found him collapsed next to his workbench. His toolbox had spilled across the floor. Wrenches and screwdrivers scattered everywhere. His reading glasses had fallen off. One lens was cracked. I called 911. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Please," I kept saying. "Please hurry. Please." The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes. They worked on him for 23 minutes. I counted every second. But the coroner told me later he was probably gone before he hit the ground. Massive coronary. No suffering, they said, as if that made it easier. It didn't. The funeral was on January 22nd, a Monday. Overcast skies, temperature in the low 40s. We held it at Evergreen Washelli Cemetery where Benjamin's parents were buried. Modest service. Maybe 60 people. Colleagues from the Department of Transportation. Neighbors from Oakwood Drive. A few cousins I hadn't seen in years. Eugene and his wife Nancy were there, of course. They'd been married for 4 years by then. Got married on September 3rd, 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. A small ceremony at a vineyard in Woodinville. Only 20 guests because of the restrictions. Nancy was beautiful that day in her ivory dress, her blonde hair perfect, her smile radiant. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. "We're family, Mom," Eugene said during one of those early visits after the funeral, hugging me tight in my living room. "You'll never be alone. We'll always be here for you." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The house became a tomb after Benjamin died. Every corner whispered his name. The armchair by the window where he read the Sunday paper, his reading glasses always perched on the side table. The coffee mug I couldn't bring myself to wash still sitting in the sink with the faint ring of his last cup. The workshop in the garage where he fixed everything, leaky faucets, broken cabinet doors, my grandmother's antique clock. The side of the bed that stayed cold no matter how many blankets I piled on. In the first weeks after the funeral, Eugene and Nancy visited regularly, 3 times a week at first. Eugene would sit with me in the living room. We'd look through old photo albums. Nancy would make tea, hovering in the kitchen, checking her phone. "How are you holding up, Mom?" Eugene would ask. "I'm managing," I'd say. Because what else do you say when your heart is shattered into 1,000 pieces? By February, the visits had dropped to twice a week. By March, once a week. And they started feeling different. Rushed. Like something they had to check off a list rather than something they wanted to do. Eugene would glance at his watch during our conversations. "We've got to get going soon. Early meeting tomorrow." Nancy would interrupt with, "We have dinner reservations," or "We're supposed to meet friends." I'd nod and smile. "Of course, sweetheart. You two are so busy. I understand." But I didn't understand. Not really. Because when you've just lost the love of your life after 45 years, you don't understand why your son can't sit with you for more than 30 minutes. By April, something had shifted. Eugene stopped answering 7 out of 10 phone calls. When he did pick up, his voice had that distracted quality, like he was doing something else, like I was interrupting. "Hey, Mom, can this wait? I'm in the middle of something." "I just wanted to hear your voice," I'd say. "I'll call you back later, okay?" He never called back. Nancy was even worse. When I'd text her asking how she was doing, or if they wanted to come for dinner this weekend, she'd take 2 or 3 days to respond. And when she did, it was always the same. "Super busy with work. Maybe next month." I started to feel it then. That sinking sensation in your chest. Like the ground beneath your feet is slowly giving way and you're trying so hard to pretend you're not falling. I told myself I was being paranoid. They were young. Eugene was 43. Nancy was 29. They had careers to build. Eugene worked as a project manager at Cascade Construction, making good money, $85,000 a year. Nancy was a marketing specialist at some tech startup called Tech Vista, pulling in $68,000. They had lives, friends, responsibilities. Of course they couldn't visit every week. Of course they were busy. But the little things started adding up. In June, I ran into Nancy at Nordstrom. I was browsing the sale rack. I'd learned to be frugal over the years, even though Benjamin's pension was decent. I looked up, and there she was 3 racks over, holding up a designer blouse. The price tag said $340. I watched her add it to a growing pile over her arm. Easily $2,000 worth of clothes. "Nancy," I called out, waving. She glanced over. Our eyes met. And I swear to God she looked right through me. Then she turned and walked the other direction toward the escalator. Maybe she didn't see me, I told myself as I drove home. Maybe she was distracted. But she saw me. I know she did. My neighbor, Mrs. Patricia Williams, lovely woman, 70 years old, lived next door for 30 years, stopped me one afternoon in July while I was getting the mail. "Melissa, honey, is everything all right with Eugene?" she asked. "I haven't seen him in weeks. Used to be he'd stop by every Sunday." "Oh, he's just busy," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Work, you know how it is." Patricia squeezed my hand. "You let me know if you need anything, all right? Frank and I are right next door." I nodded and hurried inside before she could see the tears. Then came August 28th. I remember the date because it was Benjamin's birthday. He would have been 68. I spent the morning at the cemetery sitting on the cold ground next to his headstone talking to him like I did every week. "I miss you," I whispered. "God, Benjamin, I miss you so much. And I think something's wrong with Eugene. I think I'm losing him too." When I got home, there was a voicemail on my phone. Nancy's voice clipped and businesslike. "Melissa, it's Nancy. I wanted to let you know that I'm pregnant. 8 weeks along. Due in early March. We'll let you know when we're ready for visitors. Talk soon." That was it. No warmth, no excitement, just a notification. Like she was leaving a message for her dentist. I played it 3 times, trying to find some hint of joy in her voice. Some acknowledgement that I was about to be a grandmother. That this was supposed to be a happy moment we'd share together. There was nothing. I called Eugene immediately. Straight to voicemail. I called again an hour later. Voicemail. I texted, "Sweetheart, I just heard the wonderful news. I'm so happy for you both." "Can we talk?" He responded 6 hours later. "Thanks, Mom. Been meaning to call. Things are crazy right now. We'll touch base soon." We'll touch base soon. Like I was a business associate, not his mother. I sat in Benjamin's armchair that night, staring at nothing. The house was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the tick of the clock on the mantel, my own heartbeat in my ears. And for the first time since Benjamin died, I felt truly alone. September 14th, 2024, the most humiliating day of my life. I woke up that Saturday morning around 7, made coffee, scrambled some eggs. I'd been thinking about Eugene and Nancy all week, about the baby, about how distant they'd become. And I'd made a decision. I was going to try one more time. I cleaned the whole house, vacuumed, dusted, made sure everything was perfect. Then I went to the kitchen and started cooking. Blueberry pancakes, Eugene's favorite since he was 5 years old, maple sausage, fresh squeezed orange juice, a fruit salad with strawberries and melon. At 8:30, I called his cell phone. He actually answered. I almost dropped the phone in surprise. "Mom, what's up?" "Hi, sweetheart. I was wondering if you and Nancy might want to come over today. I haven't seen you in 3 weeks, and I thought we could have brunch and talk about the baby." "Actually," he interrupted, "we were planning to come by anyway. How's 10:30? My heart soared. "That's perfect. I'm making your favorite. See you then." He hung up before I could finish. I should have known something was wrong. His voice had been too flat, too controlled, but I was so happy at the prospect of seeing them that I ignored the warning signs. I set the dining room table with the good china, the set my mother had given us for our wedding, put out cloth napkins, fresh flowers from the garden in the center. Everything looked beautiful. At 10:28, the doorbell rang. I practically ran to the door, smoothed my hair, put on my brightest smile, opened it wide. Eugene stood there in a dark suit and tie, like he was going to a business meeting. His face was stone, cold, empty. He was holding a thick manila folder. Behind him, Nancy wore a red dress, fitted, expensive looking. Her belly had just started to show, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked at me the way you'd look at something unpleasant you'd stepped in. No hug, no hi, Mom, no smile. "We need to talk," Eugene said flatly. He didn't wait for me to invite him in. He just walked past me into the living room. My stomach dropped. "Of course, honey. Come in. I made brunch." "This won't take long," Nancy cut in. Her voice was sharp, cold. They stood in the middle of the living room. Neither of them sat down. Eugene set the manila folder on the coffee table but didn't open it. My hands started to shake. "What's wrong?" "Is something wrong with the baby?" "The baby's fine," Eugene said, not looking at me, looking at a spot on the wall just over my shoulder. "Nancy's 12 weeks now. Everything looks good." "Oh, thank God. I've been so worried." "Mom," his voice was hard, final. "Nancy and I need more space. The baby needs a proper nursery. We need to prepare." My heart lifted for just a second. "I can help. I can set up the nursery. I can babysit. I can—" "This house is too big for one person," he interrupted. "You're rattling around here all alone. It doesn't make sense." The words weren't computing. I stared at him, waiting for the rest of the sentence, waiting for it to make sense. Nancy stepped forward, one hand resting on her belly. Her nails were perfectly manicured, pale pink. "What Eugene is trying to say is that you need to move out, Melissa. We're moving in here." The room tilted. The floor seemed to shift under my feet. "What?" It came out as a whisper. Nancy's voice was patient, like she was explaining something to a child. "You can find a nice little apartment, something more appropriate for a woman your age, something you can actually afford on Benjamin's pension. This house is wasted on you." I looked at Eugene, my son, the boy I'd raised, the child I'd loved with every fiber of my being. "Eugene, please tell me this is a joke." He finally met my eyes, and there was nothing there. No warmth, no recognition, no love. "It's not a joke, Mom. Legally, this house is as much mine as it is yours. Dad added my name to the deed back in 2019. Remember to avoid probate issues." I did remember. Benjamin had been so proud of himself for thinking ahead, for being smart about estate planning. He'd sat me down at the kitchen table one Saturday afternoon, spread out the paperwork. "It's just a formality, Mel," he'd said. "This way, when I'm gone, Eugene doesn't have to go through probate. The house will pass to him automatically. It'll save time and money. You'll still live here, of course. It's your home. It just makes things easier legally." I'd signed where he told me to sign, trusted him completely. I never imagined, not in a million years, that my own son would use it as a weapon against me. "Benjamin meant for me to live here," he said. My voice was shaking. "This is my home. I've lived here for 45 years. Your father and I built our life here. All our memories. Memories don't pay property taxes," Nancy snapped. "And they certainly don't help us prepare for a baby." I turned to her, really looked at her. She was 29 years old, beautiful, confident, standing in my living room in front of the fireplace where we'd hung Eugene's Christmas stockings every year, telling me I had to leave. "Please," I whispered. "Please don't do this to me." Nancy's expression didn't change. If anything, she looked annoyed. "Enough with the victim act, Melissa. You've been a burden your whole life. You never worked a real day. Never contributed anything meaningful. Benjamin knew it. He just didn't have the guts to say it to your face." The words hit me like a physical slap. I actually stumbled backward, gripping the arm of the sofa to steady myself. "That's not true," I managed. "I raised Eugene. I took care of this house. I managed everything." "You were a housewife," Nancy said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Congratulations. You did the bare minimum. Now it's time for you to step aside and let the people who actually matter take over." I looked at Eugene again, desperately searching his face for some sign that he'd defend me, that he'd tell his wife she was wrong, that he'd remember all those nights I'd sat up with him when he was sick, all those science projects, all those soccer games, all that love. But he said nothing. He just stood there, jaw clenched, looking at the floor. Eugene opened the manila folder and pulled out a stack of papers. "You have 10 days to pack your things and find somewhere else to live. September 24th is your deadline." 10 days? My voice came out high and thin, panicked. "Where am I supposed to go? I don't have enough money to—" "That's not our problem," Nancy said. She was stroking her belly now, protective, like I was somehow a threat to her unborn child. "This baby needs a stable home, a real home. You understand that, don't you?" As a mother, the cruelty of it took my breath away. Using motherhood, my own identity, the thing I'd devoted my entire life to, against me. I fell to my knees. Actually fell to my knees on the living room carpet. Reached out and grabbed Eugene's hand. "Please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "Please, son. Please don't do this. I'm your mother. I gave you everything. Everything I had. My whole life. Please." For just a second, just a flicker, I thought I saw something in his eyes. Doubt, guilt, shame. But then Nancy put her hand on his arm, squeezed, and whatever I'd seen vanished. Eugene pulled his hand away from mine. "The decision is final, Mom. We're changing the locks on the 25th. Make sure you're gone by then." He turned and walked toward the door. Nancy followed her heels, clicking on the hardwood floor. "Oh, and Melissa," Nancy said, pausing in the doorway. "Don't bother calling or texting. We don't want to hear from you. We have a family to think about now. A real family." The door closed behind them. I stayed on my knees in the middle of the living room, staring at nothing. The brunch I'd made was getting cold on the dining room table. The blueberry pancakes Eugene loved. The orange juice I'd squeezed by hand. Nobody was going to eat it. I don't know how long I stayed there. An hour or two, at some point I collapsed onto the carpet, curled into a ball, and I cried. I cried until I couldn't breathe, until my ribs ached, until I had nothing left. The house, my home for 45 years, felt like a prison now. And in 10 days I wouldn't even have that. The next 7 days were a nightmare I wouldn't wish on anyone. I called Eugene's cell phone 43 times. I counted. 43 calls over 7 days. He never answered. Not once. Every call went straight to voicemail. After the 10th call, I stopped leaving messages. What was the point? I texted Nancy. Begged her. "Please, I just want to talk. I'm going to be the baby's grandmother. Can't we work something out?" She responded 6 hours later. Just 4 words. Stop bothering us. The next day, another text. We don't want anything to do with you. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at those words on my phone screen until they blurred. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel bands around my ribs and was slowly, methodically tightening them. I opened my banking app with shaking hands. Checking account $2,347.82. That was it. That was everything I had in the world. Benjamin's pension had been modest. Most of it had gone to medical bills in his final years, blood pressure medication, cholesterol meds, his heart doctor visits. Then the funeral. God, the funeral. Even the cheapest casket was $3,200. The plot at Evergreen Washelli, another $2,800. The service, the flowers, the reception at the church basement. I'd burned through almost all our savings burying my husband. Now I had $2,347.82 in 10 days to find somewhere to live. I started looking at apartments online. Cheap ones. Studio apartments in South Seattle, in neighborhoods I'd never been to. The cheapest I could find was $950 a month, plus first and last month's rent, plus deposit. That was $2,850 right there, more than I had. And that didn't account for food, utilities, my blood pressure medication, the thyroid pills I took every morning. I felt panic rising in my throat like bile. I started packing on September 16th, 2 days after they'd thrown me out. 45 years of life, 45 years of memories, and I had to fit it all into boxes. I went through the house room by room, making impossible decisions. What do you keep when you can only take what fits in a small apartment you can't even afford? The wedding china my mother gave us. Hand-painted roses on white porcelain. Service for 12. I packed it carefully in bubble wrap, even though I knew I'd probably never use it again. Who was I going to serve dinner for 12 to Benjamin's flannel shirts? I pulled them out of his closet one by one, held them to my face. They still smelled like him. Old Spice deodorant and the mint gum he always chewed. I couldn't throw them away. I packed 3 of them, left the rest. Photo albums, dozens of them. Eugene as a baby, gap-toothed and grinning. Eugene's first day of kindergarten. Eugene's high school graduation. Eugene's wedding to Nancy, her in that perfect ivory dress, him looking at her like she hung the moon. I packed them all. Even the wedding photos. Because even though they'd broken my heart, they were still my memories. Still my life. Eugene's baby shoes. Tiny white leather high tops. I'd saved them for 28 years, thinking maybe one day I'd give them to him when he had kids of his own. When I became a grandmother, I held them in my hands and cried. Then I packed them too. By September 20th, I had 8 cardboard boxes. That's what remained of Melissa Bennett's life. 8 boxes that I could barely lift. Mrs. Patricia Williams came over that afternoon, found me sitting on the floor of the living room surrounded by boxes, crying. "Oh, honey," she said, kneeling down beside me, her knees cracked. "Oh, Melissa." "I don't know what to do," I whispered. "I don't know where to go." She wrapped her arms around me. "This is wrong. This is so wrong. What Eugene is doing, it's elder abuse, Melissa. You could press charges. You could fight this." I shook my head. "He's my son. I can't do that to him." "Even after what he's done to you?" I didn't have an answer for that. Patricia helped me pack the last few boxes. She didn't say much, just worked alongside me, wrapping dishes in newspaper, taping boxes shut. When we were done, she squeezed my hand. "Frank and I are here if you need us. Promise me you'll call if you need help." I promised, but I knew I wouldn't call. What could they do? They were in their 70s, living on Social Security. They had their own problems. September 24th arrived like an execution date. I'd finally found a place I could afford. Sort of. The Skyline Motel on Pacific Highway South. It wasn't an apartment. It was a weekly motel. The kind with exterior hallways and doors that opened directly to the parking lot. The kind where you paid by the week and didn't ask questions about your neighbors. Room 2B. $47 a night. $329 a week. It was the cheapest thing I could find in all of Seattle. I called a taxi at 9 a.m. The driver was a young man, maybe 30, with kind eyes. He helped me load my 8 boxes into his trunk. "Moving day?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. Before I left, I walked through 847 Oakwood Drive one last time. Ran my hand along the kitchen counter where I'd made thousands of meals. stood in the living room where Eugene had taken his first steps, looked at the spot on the wall where we'd marked Eugene's height every birthday from age 2 to age 16. Little pencil marks with dates next to them. I'd asked Eugene if I could paint over them before I left. He'd said no. We're repainting the whole house anyway. I left the house keys on the kitchen table, put them on top of a note I'd written on a piece of paper torn from a grocery list pad. Be happy. I love you both. Mom. Then I walked out, closed the door behind me, got into the taxi. I didn't look back. The Skyline Motel was worse than I'd imagined. The taxi pulled up to a 2-story building that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1985. Faded blue paint peeling off the exterior walls. A flickering neon sign missing 2 letters, Sky_I NEMO_EL. The driver helped me carry my boxes up the exterior staircase to the 2nd floor. The stairs shook with every step. The metal railing was loose. Room 2B was at the end of the hallway. The door was warped and stuck when I tried to open it. I had to put my shoulder into it. Inside the room was maybe 12 feet by 12 feet. A double bed with a sagging mattress and a faded floral bedspread that might have been pink once but was now a dingy gray. A tiny bathroom with cracked tiles and a rust stain in the sink. A window that looked out over the dumpsters in the back alley. The carpet was brown. Or maybe it had been beige and was now brown from years of dirt. It smelled like cigarettes and mildew and something else I couldn't identify. This was my home now. I sat on the edge of the bed. The springs squeaked. The mattress dipped so far in the middle that I felt like I was sitting in a hammock. And I cried again. Because what else was there to do? That first night I learned what it meant to be truly poor. The walls were so thin I could hear everything. The couple in 2A fighting about money, their voices getting louder and louder until something crashed against the wall. The sound of breaking glass. Someone in 2C was playing music. Bass so loud it vibrated through the floor. It didn't stop until 3 in the morning. At 1 a.m. police sirens wailed through the parking lot. I peeked through the blinds. 2 squad cars' lights flashing. Officers talking to a man in handcuffs. I couldn't sleep. The bed was uncomfortable. The room was too hot. The air conditioning rattled but didn't actually cool anything. And I was scared. Actually scared. Of my neighbors. Of this place. Of my life. I lay there staring at the water-stained ceiling, wondering how I'd gotten here. Wondering where I'd gone wrong. At 4 a.m., I finally dozed off, and I dreamed about Benjamin. He was sitting in his armchair reading the Sunday paper, and when I walked up to him, he looked at me and said, "You're stronger than you think, Mel. Remember that." I woke up crying. By October 1st, I'd lost 11 pounds. Not on purpose. I just couldn't afford to eat much. I'd found a grocery store called Save Mart 3 blocks from the motel. It was small, dingy, with flickering fluorescent lights and floor tiles that stuck to your shoes. But it was cheap. Day-old bread, $1.29. I'd buy 2 loaves and freeze one. Dented cans of soup from the discount bin, 89 cents each. Chicken noodle mostly. Sometimes tomato. Bruised apples, brown spots on the skin, 50 cents a pound. I'd spend exactly $25 a week on groceries. That's all I could afford. $25 a week to feed myself. For breakfast, I'd eat 2 pieces of toast with margarine. For lunch, an apple and some crackers. For dinner, a can of soup. Sometimes I'd splurge and add some rice to make it more filling. My clothes started hanging loose. My face looked gaunt when I caught my reflection in the motel bathroom mirror. Gray skin. Dark circles under my eyes. I looked 76, not 66. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman who'd been thrown away. I tried to find work. God knows I tried. I walked into every business within a 2-mile radius of the motel. Coffee shops, retail stores, grocery stores, fast food restaurants. I filled out applications on my phone, sitting in the motel room at night, squinting at the small screen. "Do you have any recent work experience?" they'd ask. "Not recently," I'd admit. "But I'm a quick learner. I'm reliable. I worked as a bank teller for 3 years back in the 70s. I'm sorry, we're looking for someone with current experience." Or the more honest version, "We need someone who's more... well, we're looking for someone younger." Nobody wanted to hire a 66-year-old woman whose last job was in 1979. By mid-October, I'd applied to 47 places. I got 3 interviews. 0 job offers. My checking account dropped to $1,823.17. At this rate, I had maybe 2 more months before I couldn't pay for the motel room, before I'd be on the street. I started taking longer and longer walks during the day, not because I wanted exercise, because I couldn't stand to be in that awful room, and because walking was free October 17th, 2024, the day everything changed, though I didn't know it yet. It was a Thursday afternoon around 3:30. I'd walked all the way to Northgate Mall, about 4 miles from the motel. My feet hurt. I'd worn a hole through the sole of my left shoe and could feel the pavement through the thin cardboard I'd stuffed inside. But walking was better than sitting in that room staring at the walls thinking about how my life had fallen apart. I was cutting through the parking lot when I saw her. Nancy. She was coming out of Pottery Barn Kids, both hands full of shopping bags. 4 of them. The distinctive white bags with the blue logo. She was wearing a camel-colored coat that looked expensive. Leather boots. Her belly had grown. She was about 5 months along now. She looked healthy, radiant, happy. My heart started pounding. This was the first time I'd seen either of them since they'd kicked me out. She walked to a car I'd never seen before, a silver Mercedes-Benz SUV, brand new from the look of it, temporary tags in the back window. When did they get a Mercedes? Nancy popped the trunk and started loading the bags. I could see inside. More bags. A Moses basket. A shopping bag from Nordstrom. She'd been on quite the shopping spree. I started walking toward her before I could think better of it. "Nancy," I called out. "Nancy, wait!" She turned, saw me, and her face twisted into an expression of pure disgust. I knew how I looked. I hadn't washed my hair in 3 days to save money on the motel's hot water surcharge. My coat was from Goodwill, $8.99, dark blue, with a stain on the right cuff I hadn't been able to get out. My shoes were falling apart. I looked exactly like what I was desperate. "What are you doing here?" Nancy asked. Not hi, not how are you, just accusation. I was slightly out of breath from hurrying over. "I just wanted to know how you are, how the baby is. I'm going to be a grandmother, and I thought maybe we could—" "My child is fine," she said coldly. "And they'll stay fine as long as they stay far away from you. Please, Nancy, I know we got off on the wrong foot, but can't we—" "There is no we, Melissa." She glanced around like she was worried someone might see her talking to me. "You need to move on with your life and stop bothering us." "I'm not bothering you. I just happened to see you and I thought—" "You thought wrong." She climbed into the Mercedes. The door shut with an expensive-sounding thunk. The engine started with a quiet purr. I stood there on the pavement as she backed out of the parking space. She didn't look at me, didn't wave, just drove away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot. People were staring at me. I could feel their eyes. An old woman in dirty clothes talking to herself in a parking lot. I walked the 4 miles back to the motel. By the time I got there, it was dark. My feet were bleeding. I had blisters on both heels. I sat on the edge of that terrible bed and made a decision. I would not beg anymore. I would not humiliate myself for scraps of affection from people who saw me as worthless. If they wanted to treat me as if I were dead, then I would be dead to them. But even as I made that decision, I had no idea how I was going to survive. No money, no job, no family, no hope. I was utterly, completely alone. October 19th, 2024. A Saturday morning. Gray skies, drizzle. Classic Seattle October weather. I woke up at 6 a.m. like I always did. Years of making breakfast for Benjamin had trained my body to wake early, even though there was no one to cook for anymore. I made instant coffee in the motel room using the little coffee maker that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. The coffee tasted like hot water with a hint of bitterness, but at least it was warm. I'd been avoiding the last box, the one I'd brought from the house but hadn't opened yet. Benjamin's personal items, I'd written on the side in black Sharpie. I knew what was in there. His watch, his reading glasses, the stack of detective novels he loved, Robert B. Parker, Michael Connelly, his spare set of work gloves, the little things that were too painful to look at but too important to throw away. But that morning I decided it was time. I couldn't keep avoiding it forever. I pulled the box over to the bed, cut through the packing tape with my room key, opened the flaps. The smell hit me first. Benjamin's smell. Old Spice and mint gum and that indefinable scent that was just him. I had to stop for a moment, close my eyes, breathe. I pulled out his watch first. A Timex with a leather band. Nothing fancy. He'd worn it every day for 20 years. The crystal was scratched. The leather was worn smooth where it had rubbed against his wrist. I held it to my ear. It had stopped, of course. No one had wound it. His reading glasses, wire-rimmed. One arm was slightly bent where he'd sat on them once and tried to straighten them out. The detective novels, dog-eared pages, coffee stains on some of the covers. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in newspaper, I found something I didn't remember packing. A stack of letters tied together with red string. I frowned, pulled them out. The newspaper wrapping was yellowed, dated 1974. The letters were in envelopes addressed in Benjamin's handwriting. To my beloved Melissa, the top one said. My hands started shaking. I untied the string with trembling fingers, opened the first envelope. The letter inside was dated June 2023, just a year and a half ago, 7 months before Benjamin died. I started reading. My dearest Melissa, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. I'm sorry for leaving and sorrier still for keeping secrets. But you need to know everything now. Before we met in 1978, I worked in real estate while finishing my engineering degree. It was 1973 to 1976. I was 19, 20, 21, young and ambitious and maybe a little reckless with money. In 1974, Seattle was different. The areas we know now, Aurora, Greenwood, Lake City, Northgate, they were nothing back then, just farmland and dirt roads. Nobody wanted to live that far from downtown. Land was cheap, dirt cheap. $500 to $2,000 per acre. I'd been working construction jobs, saving every penny. By the summer of 1974, I had about $8,400 saved up. My boss told me I was an idiot for not spending it, not enjoying my youth. But I had this idea. I bought 12 small parcels of land around Seattle's edges. Little pieces of nothing. Fields, woods, places where nobody wanted to build because they were too far from the city center. I spent every dollar I had. 12 parcels for about $14,000 total. I borrowed $5,600 from my brother Tom. You remember Tom? He died in '95 and promised I'd pay him back. I thought maybe in 20 years those parcels would be worth something. Maybe I could sell them, and we could use the money to start our life together. Once I met you, that became the plan. But then we got married. We had Eugene. Life happened. Bills, diapers, soccer cleats, college funds. And honestly, Mel, I forgot about those parcels. Just completely forgot. They sat there for decades, and I never thought about them. Until 2022. I was cleaning out the garage, organizing files for retirement, and I found the old deed paperwork. Just stumbled across it in a box of tax returns from the 70s. Out of curiosity, I looked up the addresses. I couldn't believe what I saw. Those empty fields. They're not empty anymore, Melissa. There are shopping centers built on them, apartment complexes, office parks. The city grew around those parcels, swallowed them up, made them valuable. I took the deeds to a property appraiser, sat in his office while he ran comps. When he told me the number, I thought he'd made a mistake. $2,847,000. We own almost $3 million in property around Seattle. The letter fell from my hands. I stared at it on the bedspread, the words blurring. $3 million. Benjamin had left me $3 million. And I was living in a $47 a night motel, eating day-old bread and canned soup, while my son and his wife lived in my house and bought Mercedes-Benzes. I picked up the letter again, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. I didn't tell you because I knew what you'd do. You'd insist we sell everything immediately and give it all to Eugene. Set him up for life. Make sure he never struggled. That's who you are, Mel. Generous to a fault. You'd give away every penny if you thought it would help our boy. But something about Nancy has always bothered me. The way she looks at our house like she's appraising it. The way she asks questions about our finances. The way Eugene has changed since he married her. I don't trust her, Melissa. I'm sorry to say it, but I don't. So I kept this secret. I kept it as insurance. If anything happened to me, and if anyone ever hurt you, you'd have the power to fight back. In 2023, I went to a lawyer, Richard Lawson. His card is in this envelope, and I had everything put in your name alone. Not Eugene's, not joint ownership, just yours. Eugene has no legal claim to any of these properties. None. They're yours completely and solely. I also set up a bank account. Puget Sound bank account number is in the attached paperwork. 2 of the parcels have been leased to businesses, a storage facility on one, a cell phone tower on another. The lease payments have been automatically depositing into that account since 2019. You should have about $67,000 in there by now. Maybe more. Safe deposit box number 1247 at First Puget Sound Bank, Roosevelt Branch. The key is taped behind our wedding photo. Remember that photo? The one from our wedding day, June 8, 1979. The one where you're laughing and I'm looking at you like you hung the stars. It's all there, Melissa. All the deeds. All the paperwork. Everything you need. You are the strongest woman I've ever known. Stronger than you believe. If you need to be a warrior, be one. You have my permission. You have my blessing. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness. And Melissa, I'm sorry I won't be there to see you win, because you will win. I know you will. All my love forever, Benjamin P.S. Don't let Eugene or Nancy know about this until you're ready. Surprise them. Make them understand exactly who they threw away. I sat on that bed in that terrible motel room and cried, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of rage, and something else. Power. I grabbed the wedding photo I'd packed. It was in one of the boxes wrapped in tissue paper. The frame was cheap wood bought at Target for $12.99 20 years ago. I turned it over. And there, taped to the back with yellowed Scotch tape, was a small brass key. I held it up to the light. It was real. All of it was real. I looked at the photo. Benjamin and me on our wedding day. I was 21, wearing a simple white dress my mother had helped me make. Benjamin was 23 in a rented tux. We were standing outside the courthouse. We couldn't afford a big wedding. I was laughing at something he'd said. He was looking at me with such love in his eyes. I won't let you down, I whispered to the photo. I promise, Benjamin. I promise. I went through the rest of the letters. There were 6 more, each one providing more details. Lists of the 12 properties with exact addresses and lot numbers. Copies of the original purchase receipts from 1974. Benjamin had paid between $800 and $2,300 per parcel. Photographs from 1974 showing empty fields and dirt roads. Survey maps. And the most recent appraisal from May 2023, $2,847,000 total value. The last letter was shorter. Mel, by the time you read this, the properties are probably worth even more. Seattle keeps growing. Land keeps getting more valuable. Use this wisely. Sell some if you need cash. Keep some as investments. Do whatever you think is right. But most importantly, protect yourself. Take care of yourself. Don't let anyone push you around ever again. You were never left unprotected, my love. You were never helpless. You are a warrior. Act like one. I sat there in that motel room for a long time holding the letters, holding the key. The couple in 2A started fighting again. The bass from 2C vibrated through the walls. A siren wailed somewhere in the distance, but I didn't hear any of it. All I could think was, they threw me away. They threw me away and took my house and bought a Mercedes and went shopping for their baby while I lived in this hellhole and rationed canned soup. And they had no idea that I was sitting on almost $3 million. I looked at my reflection in the mirror above the dresser. That gray, gaunt face, those hollow eyes, that defeated woman, and slowly I smiled. It was time to stop being a victim. It was time to be a warrior. October 20th, 2024, 9 a.m. I stood outside First Puget Sound Bank on Roosevelt Way, the brass key clutched in my hand so tightly it left an imprint in my palm. I'd barely slept. Couldn't sleep. I'd spent the entire night reading and rereading Benjamin's letters, going through the paperwork, trying to make sense of it all. $3 million, give or take, and $67,000 just sitting in a bank account I didn't know I had. The bank was a solid brick building that had been there since the 1960s. Benjamin had banked here for 40 years. I'd come here with him sometimes, waiting in the car while he deposited his paychecks back before everything was done online. I took a deep breath. Smoothed down my coat, the Goodwill coat with the stain on the cuff. I wished I looked more presentable, more like someone who had $3 million in property. But this was all I had. I walked through the glass doors. The lobby was quiet. Soft lighting, marble floors, a few people waiting in line for the tellers. I walked up to the front desk where a young man sat typing on his computer. His nameplate read, Trevor Walsh Customer Service. He looked up and smiled. Professional. Polite. Good morning. How can I help you today? I need to access a safe deposit box, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Box number 1247. He typed into his computer. Of course. May I see your identification, please? I handed over my driver's license with shaking hands. Please let this work. Please let Benjamin have done what he said he did. Trevor studied my license, then looked at his screen. His eyebrows rose slightly. Mrs. Bennett, this box hasn't been accessed since June 2023. Are you certain this is your box? My heart sank. It belonged to my husband, Benjamin. He passed away in January. He told me, he left me information about, I'm so sorry for your loss, Trevor said, and his voice was genuinely kind. Mr. Bennett was a valued customer here for many years. I remember him. Always came in on Fridays to deposit his paycheck even after we told him he could do it online. I felt tears prick my eyes. That was Benjamin. Old-fashioned. Liked doing things the traditional way. Let me verify the account holder, Trevor said, typing more. He looked at his screen for a long moment. Then he smiled. You're listed as the primary box holder as of March 2023. You have full access. Let me get you into a private viewing room. The relief nearly knocked me over. He stood up, grabbed a set of keys, and led me through a heavy door into a quiet hallway. Take all the time you need, Mrs. Bennett. Would you like some water, coffee? Water would be lovely, thank you. He led me into a small private room. Just a table and 2 chairs. Plain walls. A box of tissues on the table. I wondered how many people had sat in this room crying over their dead spouse's belongings. I'll be right back with your box, Trevor said. I sat down and waited. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. 3 minutes later, Trevor returned carrying a long metal safe deposit box. He set it on the table in front of me. Insert your key here, he said, pointing to one of 2 keyholes. I'll use the bank's key here. You have to turn them both at the same time. We turned the keys together. The lock clicked. The lid popped open slightly. I'll give you privacy now, Trevor said. Press this button when you're ready to leave and I'll come lock the box back up. Or if you'd like to take anything with you, that's fine too. It's your box. He left, closing the door behind him. I stared at the metal box for a long moment. Then, with trembling hands, I lifted the lid. Inside were folders. Lots of them. Organized and labeled in Benjamin's neat handwriting. Property deeds. Blue folder. I opened it. 12 property deeds, each one stamped and notarized. Each one with my name, Melissa Ann Bennett, listed as sole owner. Surveys and maps. Green folder. Survey maps showing exact property lines, measurements, neighboring parcels. Appraisals. Red folder. 3 separate appraisals from different firms, all dated May 2023. The values ranged from $2.7 million to $2.9 million. Average $2,847,000. Bank information. Yellow folder. Account number, routing number, login information for online banking. A printout showing the account balance as of June 2023, $52,430. If Benjamin was right, and the lease payments had continued for the past 16 months, there should be about $67,000 in there now. White envelope. For my warrior. I'd already read this one last night, but I read it again now sitting in this quiet bank room, and I cried again reading Benjamin's words. You are the strongest woman I've ever known. If you need to be a warrior, be one. I will, I whispered. I promise, Benjamin. I will. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of every single document, every deed, every survey, every appraisal, every page of the bank information. Then I carefully put everything back in the folders and closed the box. When I pressed the button, Trevor came back. Did you find everything you needed? He asked. Yes, I said. But I'd like to take the box with me. Is that allowed? Of course. You're the owner. You can close the box entirely if you'd like, or keep it open and just take the contents. Up to you. I'll take everything, I said. He helped me carry the box out to the lobby. It wasn't heavy, just papers after all. But my hands were shaking too much to trust myself. Mrs. Bennett, he said as we reached the front desk. If you need any help with accounts or anything, please don't hesitate to call. I knew your husband. He was a good man. Thank you, I managed. He was. He really was. I walked out of First Puget Sound Bank at 10:17 a.m. on October 20th, 2024, carrying a metal box that contained the keys to my new life. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something I'd forgotten existed. Hope. I didn't go back to the motel right away. I couldn't. I was too wired, too full of adrenaline and emotion, and something that felt almost like rage. I walked to a coffee shop 2 blocks from the bank. Not a Starbucks, I couldn't afford Starbucks. A little independent place called Java Jive. Coffee was $2.50 for a medium. I ordered one and sat at a corner table with my phone. First, I checked the bank account Benjamin had set up. I logged in using the information from the yellow folder. Held my breath as the page loaded. Account balance $67,430.84. I stared at those numbers until they blurred. $67,430.84. Just sitting there. While I'd been eating canned soup and rationing medication and living in a room that cost $47 a night, I could have moved out of that motel weeks ago, could have rented a decent apartment, could have eaten real food, if only I'd known. But maybe it was better this way. Maybe I needed to hit rock bottom first. Needed to understand exactly what Eugene and Nancy had done to me. Needed to feel that pain and humiliation. Because now I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. I opened a new note on my phone and started typing. The plan, what I know. Eugene and Nancy took the house at 847 Oakwood Drive. Nancy is 5 months pregnant, due around March 2025. They're spending money freely. Mercedes shopping sprees, expensive clothes. They believe I have nothing. They told me they don't want anything to do with me, what I have. $67,430 in cash, liquid available immediately. 12 parcels of land worth approximately $3 million. Complete legal documentation proving ownership. Eugene has no claim to any of it. They don't know any of this exists. What I need to know. Their exact financial situation. What they've told people about me. Whether they're struggling financially, my guess yes. The mortgage status on 847 Oakwood Drive. Their vulnerabilities. The best way to make them understand what they've done. Next steps: 1. Move out of Skyline Motel today. 2. Find a lawyer, a good one. 3. Get current appraisals on all 12 properties. 4. Hire a private investigator to dig into Eugene and Nancy's finances. 5. Decide which properties to sell for immediate cash. 6. Find out everything I can before making my move. 7. When the time is right, show them exactly who they threw away. I read through the list 3 times. Refined it, added details. Then I finished my coffee, picked up the metal box, and walked out of Java Jive with my head held high. By 2 p.m. that afternoon, I'd checked into the Silver Cloud Hotel in the University District. It cost $189 a night, nearly 4 times what the Skyline Motel cost. But I didn't care. I had $67,430 in the bank. I could afford it. The room was on the 4th floor, clean, bright. It had a real bed with crisp white sheets, a bathroom with hot water and water pressure, a window that looked out over the University of Washington campus instead of a dumpster. I stood in the shower for 20 minutes, letting the hot water wash away weeks of that motel's grime and shame. I washed my hair 3 times, used the little bottles of nice shampoo and conditioner. When I got out, I wrapped myself in the thick white towel and looked at myself in the mirror. I still looked tired, still too thin, but there was something different in my eyes. Determination. I ordered room service. The first real meal I'd had in weeks. A chicken Caesar salad. Bread. A glass of white wine. It cost $47, exactly what one night at the Skyline Motel cost. And it was worth every penny. October 22nd, 2024. 10 a.m. I stood outside the Columbia Center in downtown Seattle, looking up at the 76-story building. The tallest building in the city. Glass and steel reaching into the gray October sky. Richard Lawson and Associates had offices on the 38th floor. I'd spent the previous day researching attorneys. Not just any attorneys, real estate attorneys who specialized in property sales and asset protection. Richard Lawson's name kept coming up. Stanford Law. 30 years of experience, reputation for discretion, and what one review called ruthless efficiency in protecting client interests. Perfect. I'd called his office yesterday afternoon. I have properties I need to sell. I told the receptionist. Discreetly, and I need legal advice on asset protection. Mr. Lawson's retainer is $15,000, she'd said, not unkindly but matter-of-factly, like she was used to that number making people hang up. That's acceptable, I'd said. Can I see him tomorrow, 10 a.m.? There'd been a pause. Let me check his calendar. Another pause. Typing sounds. He can see you at 10. May I have your name? Melissa Bennett. Now here I was walking through the revolving doors into the marble lobby. My reflection caught in the polished surfaces. I'd gone shopping yesterday afternoon at Nordstrom Real Shopping, not the sale rack. A simple navy pantsuit, $680. Low heels, $140. A leather portfolio to carry the property documents, $95. I looked like a woman who had money. Because now I did. The elevator ride to the 38th floor was smooth and quiet. Soft classical music playing. When the doors opened, I stepped into a reception area that screamed success. Dark wood paneling. Original art on the walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The receptionist smiled at me. Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Lawson is expecting you. Right this way. She led me down a hallway to a corner office. And when I walked in, the view nearly took my breath away. Windows on 2 walls. The entire city spread out below. The Space Needle. Pike Place Market. Ferries crossing Puget Sound toward Bainbridge Island. The Olympic Mountains in the distance, their peaks white with early snow. Richard Lawson stood up from behind his desk. He was 54, according to his website. Silver hair, sharp blue eyes, expensive suit. He extended his hand. Mrs. Bennett, Richard Lawson, please have a seat. I shook his hand firm grip and sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Your receptionist mentioned you have properties to sell, he said, settling back into his own chair. Tell me about them. I opened my portfolio and laid out the 12 property deeds on his desk. Spread them out so he could see all of them. Richard leaned forward, picked up the first one, read it, set it down, picked up the second one. His eyebrows rose slightly. Mrs. Bennett, he said slowly, do you understand what you have here? Power, I said calmly. I have power. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not a polite smile, a real one. I think we're going to work very well together, he said. Let's talk strategy. For the next hour, Richard Lawson asked questions and I answered them. He took notes on a yellow legal pad. His handwriting was neat, methodical. Your husband purchased these in 1974. Yes, 12 parcels around Seattle. He paid between $800 and $2,300 each, and he transferred them to your name alone in 2023. March 2023, 7 months before he died. Smart man. Richard made another note. That means no probate issues, no estate complications. These are solely yours. He pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. The most recent appraisal was May 2023, correct, showing a total value of $2.847 million. Yes. It's October 2024 now, 17 months later. Seattle's real estate market has been strong. I'd estimate current value at, conservatively, $3.4 million, possibly more. My heart skipped. $3.4 million. At minimum. Some of these parcels are in areas that have seen significant development. This one, he tapped the deed for the Northgate property, is right next to the light rail station that opened in 2021. That's incredibly valuable now. He leaned back in his chair. What are your goals here, Mrs. Bennett? Do you want to sell all of them? Keep some as investments. What are we trying to accomplish? I took a deep breath. I need cash, quickly, but I also want to keep some as long-term investments. And I paused. And I need everything to be done discreetly. I don't want the sales traced back to me directly. Why the need for discretion? I met his eyes. Because my son and his wife threw me out of my home 6 weeks ago. They think I'm broke. They think I'm helpless. And I want to keep it that way until I'm ready to show them exactly how wrong they are. Richard's expression didn't change. I see. And when you say they threw you out of your home? My husband added my son's name to our house deed in 2019, for estate planning purposes. When my husband died in January, my son used that legal ownership to evict me, gave me 10 days to leave. I've been living in a motel that costs $47 a night. While you were sitting on $3 million in property, I didn't know about it until 3 days ago. My husband kept it secret, left me letters explaining everything. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Mrs. Bennett, what your son did that's elder abuse. You could press charges. You could sue. You have grounds for—" "I don't want to press charges," I said. "I want something better than that. I want them to understand, truly understand what they threw away. And I want to make sure they can never do this to me again." He nodded slowly. "All right, then here's what I recommend." He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and started sketching a plan. "We set up a limited liability company, Harbor Point Investments, LLC. You're the sole owner, but your name doesn't appear on any public documents. I'm listed as the registered agent. Anyone who looks up the LLC just sees my name and this office address." "Perfect." We immediately sell 5 of the smaller parcels, the ones in areas with current development interest. I already have buyers who've been looking for land in these exact locations. If you're willing to sell slightly below market value for a fast cash close, we could have money in your account within 3 weeks. How much? He did quick calculations. Conservative estimate $975,000, possibly as much as $1.1 million if we negotiate well. Nearly $1 million in 3 weeks. The remaining 7 parcels, he continued, we hold as long-term investments. They'll only increase in value. You keep them, let them appreciate. Use them as collateral if you ever need loans, but they're yours, secure, generating value. What about the 2 properties with leases? I asked. The storage facility and cell tower. Those stay in your portfolio. The lease payments give you steady monthly income. That's passive revenue. Very valuable. He looked at me. Does this sound like what you want? Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. How quickly can we start? I can file the LLC paperwork today. We'll have Harbor Point Investments established by tomorrow. I'll reach out to buyers by the end of this week. With any luck, we'll have offers by November 1st. I felt something unfurl in my chest. Relief, power, control. There's one more thing, I said. I need a private investigator. Someone who can do a deep background check. Financial records, employment status, debt, everything. For your son and daughter-in-law. Yes. Richard opened his desk drawer and pulled out a business card. David Torres, former Seattle PD detective. 15 years on the force, 10 years private investigation. He's thorough, discreet, and very good at what he does. He slid the card across the desk to me. Thank you, I said. Mrs. Bennett, Richard said, I want to be very clear about something. What you're doing, it's not revenge. It's protection. You're protecting yourself and your assets from people who have demonstrated they're willing to exploit you. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's smart. I nodded. I know, but it feels like revenge. Sometimes protection and justice look the same, he said. That doesn't make them wrong. October 25th, 2024. Torres Investigative Services operated out of a modest office in Fremont above a coffee shop called Milstead & Company. The sign on the door was simple. D. Torres, Private Investigations, by appointment only. I'd called 2 days ago. David Torres had answered on the second ring. Torres Investigations. Mr. Torres, my name is Melissa Bennett. Richard Lawson gave me your card. I need a comprehensive background check on 2 people. Related to legal proceedings. Personal matter, but I need it to be thorough and completely confidential. That's what I do, Mrs. Bennett. When would you like to meet? Now I sat in his office, small but professional, with filing cabinets along one wall and a desk covered in neat stacks of folders while David Torres took notes. He was 48 according to Richard. Looked younger. Dark hair just starting to gray. Steady eyes that didn't miss anything. He'd served 15 years with Seattle PD before going private. Richard said he was the best. So you need full financial backgrounds on Eugene Bennett and Nancy Bennett, David said, reviewing his notes. Current employment status, income, credit reports, debt, assets, recent large purchases. Anything that paints a picture of their financial situation. Yes, and if you can find out what they've told people about me, neighbors, friends, family, that would be helpful too. How much detail are we talking? Everything, I said. I want to know how much money they have in their checking account. I want to know if they're behind on bills. I want to know what they bought with their credit cards last month. Everything. David nodded. I can do that. Most of it's public record or semi-public. Credit reports I can access legally through my investigator's license. Bank account balances are trickier, but there are ways to get estimates. It'll take about 5 days. How much for a full deep dive on 2 subjects? $3,500. I didn't hesitate. I'll pay $5,000 if you can deliver in 3 days. He looked at me. You really want this fast? I really do. All right, I'll start today. Give me their full names, dates of birth, social security numbers if you have them, current address. I pulled out a folder. I'd come prepared. Inside were copies of old tax returns from when Benjamin and I had claimed Eugene as a dependent. His social security number was right there. Nancy's too, from their joint tax return from 2022 that Eugene had left at our house once. I handed everything over. David looked through it. This is good. This is really good. Saves me a day of research right here. What exactly will you be able to find out? I asked. Employment status and income history, credit scores and credit reports showing all debts, property records if they own anything besides the house, court records, lawsuits, judgments, liens, recent large purchases if they used credit or financing, social media activity which can tell us a lot about spending habits and lifestyle. And through some of my contacts, I can usually get a pretty accurate picture of bank account balances. He looked up at me. Mrs. Bennett, can I ask why you need all this? I hesitated. Then I told him. The whole story. Benjamin's death. Eugene and Nancy's coldness. The eviction. The motel. The discovery of the properties. All of it. When I finished, David was quiet for a moment. They threw you out with 10 days' notice while you were grieving your husband? Yes. And your daughter-in-law told you that you'd been a burden your whole life? Yes. He shook his head. I've seen a lot of things in this job, Mrs. Bennett, but elder abuse, especially from family, that's one of the worst. It's more common than people think. I don't want to press charges, I said quickly. I just want to understand their situation. I want to know what I'm dealing with. Understood. I'll have a full report for you by October 28th. 3 days. I wrote him a check for $5,000 from my new checking account. I'd opened it 2 days ago, using the $67,430 I'd transferred from Benjamin's account. As I stood to leave, David said, Mrs. Bennett, I hope you get the justice you deserve. From what you've told me, they have it coming. October 28th, 2024, 2:00 p.m., David Torres called. I have your report. Would you like me to email it, or would you prefer to meet in person? In person, I said immediately. Can you come by the office in an hour? I was there in 30 minutes. David had the report laid out on his desk, a thick manila folder with tabs dividing different sections. He looked grim. Mrs. Bennett, your son and daughter-in-law are in serious financial trouble, he said without preamble. The kind of trouble that leads to bankruptcy. My heart started pounding. Tell me everything. He opened the first tab. Eugene Bennett, fired from Cascade Construction on October 12th, 2 weeks ago. Cause for termination, performance issues, 3 written warnings and insubordination. Fired? I whispered. Eugene had been so proud of that job. Previous annual salary was $85,000. He applied for unemployment on October 13th. If approved, he'll get about $1,200 per month. That's it. Current income 0 until the unemployment kicks in. David pulled out Eugene's credit report. 4 credit cards all maxed out. Total credit card debt, $28,450. Average interest rate, 23%. He's making minimum payments, barely. Auto loan on a 2019 Ford F1, $19,200 remaining. And here's an interesting one. Personal loan from a company called Quick Cash, now for $7,500 taken out in August. Interest rate, 31%. 31% predatory lender. People only go to those when they're desperate. Current credit score 587. That's poor. Below 600 is considered high risk. He moved to the next section. Nancy Richards Bennett. She quit her job at Tech Vista Marketing on September 5th. Voluntary resignation citing pregnancy. She quit before they kicked me out, I said slowly. Yes. Previous salary was $68,000 annually. Current income 0. He pulled out Nancy's credit report. It was worse than Eugene's. 6 credit cards all maxed out. Total debt $34,780. Store card from Nordstrom, $4,200. And here's the kicker, on September 20th, she financed a Mercedes GLE 350. Purchase price $65,000. She put down $6,000 and financed $59,000 at 7.9% interest. Current loan balance, $58,900. Monthly payment, $847. I stared at the paperwork. She bought a $65,000 car after quitting her job while pregnant. People make terrible decisions when they're trying to look successful, David said. Current credit score 562, even worse than Eugene's. He pulled out another document. Joint obligations. The mortgage on 847 Oakwood Drive. Original loan amount was $320,000 taken out in 2018. Current balance $314,500. Monthly payment $2,280. And they're paying it on time, I asked. David looked at me. No, they're 3 months behind. They owe $6,840 in past due payments plus late fees. The Bank Olympic National Bank filed a notice of default on October 28th. That's today. 3 months behind. They'd stopped paying the mortgage before they even kicked me out. Total household debt, David continued, not including the mortgage, $153,030. Total monthly income $0. Total monthly expenses based on credit card statements and known bills approximately $4,800. He pulled out bank statements. I didn't ask how he got them. Joint checking account, current balance as of yesterday, $200. Savings account $0. That $200 won't even cover 1 month of their mortgage. How long until they're completely broke? I asked. They already are broke, Mrs. Bennett. They're living on credit cards and delusion. I estimate they have maybe 60 days before they can't even make minimum payments. Then the cards get declined, the car gets repossessed, and the bank forecloses on the house. He pulled out more papers. I also looked into their social media. Nancy's Instagram is public. She posts pictures of the nursery she's decorating, designer furniture, expensive baby clothes, Pottery Barn kids, tags about treating herself and preparing for our blessing. No mention of any financial stress. She's living in a fantasy world, I said. Or she's desperately trying to maintain an image, David said. People do that. Spend money they don't have to look like they have money. It's more common than you'd think, especially in their age bracket. He opened the final section. I also talked to some of the neighbors on Oakwood Drive, posed as a pollster doing neighborhood satisfaction surveys. Mrs. Patricia Williams, your former next-door neighbor, was very forthcoming. What did she say? She said Eugene told everyone you decided to move to a retirement community, that you wanted something smaller and easier to manage, that it was your choice. He specifically said you were excited about the change, and that you'd asked them to move into the house to keep it in the family. The lie hit me like a slap. They'd made me the villain of my own story. Mrs. Williams said she didn't believe it, David continued. She said you loved that house, that you'd never leave it willingly. But several other neighbors accepted the story without question. He closed the folder and looked at me. Mrs. Bennett, here's my professional assessment. Your son and daughter-in-law are in catastrophic financial collapse. They're living completely beyond their means. They took your house thinking they could afford it, but they can't. They're facing foreclosure, repossession, and probable bankruptcy within 60 to 90 days. He paused. And they're about to have a baby. In 4 months. I sat there absorbing all of it. The debt, the lies, the sheer stupidity of buying a Mercedes when you've just quit your job and your husband has been fired. Is there anything else? I asked. David pulled out one more piece of paper. One more thing. Olympic National Bank, the one that holds their mortgage, is in financial difficulty itself. They're selling off non-performing loans to reduce their portfolio. The mortgage on 847 Oakwood Drive is on their priority sale list. What does that mean? It means the bank wants to get rid of that loan. They'll sell it at a discount to get it off their books. Someone could buy that mortgage for less than its face value. An idea started forming in my mind. Slowly at first, then faster. If someone wanted to buy that mortgage, I said carefully, how would they do it? David looked at me for a long moment. You'd need to make an offer through an investment company. The bank would prefer to sell to an institutional buyer rather than an individual. It would need to be confidential, professional. Could Harbor Point Investments, LLC make such an offer? With the right attorney handling it, absolutely. A slow smile spread across my face. How much of a discount are we talking? For a non-performing loan that's already in default, the bank might take 80 to 85 cents on the dollar. So if the balance is $314,500, they might accept $250,000 to $270,000. They just want it gone. I stood up. Thank you, David. This is exactly what I needed. He stood too. Mrs. Bennet, whatever you're planning, I hope it works. Oh, it will, I said. It absolutely will. November 3rd, 2024. I sat in Richard Lawson's office again. This time I had a specific request. I want to buy my son's mortgage, I said. Richard didn't look surprised. I wondered if you might go that route. David Torres told you about the bank's situation. Yes, they're selling non-performing loans. The mortgage on 847 Oakwood Drive is on the list. I want Harbor Point Investments to buy it. At what price? Whatever it takes to close within 7 days. I want this done fast before they have any idea what's happening. Richard pulled up information on his computer. Current balance is $314,500. They're 3 months behind $6,840 in arrears. The bank filed notice of default 3 days ago. Foreclosure proceedings will start in about 60 days if they don't bring the account current. He made some notes. The bank will want to minimize their loss. I think we can get this for $265,000 to $275,000. That's about 15 to 18% discount. Offer $265,000 with a 7-day close, all cash. Make it attractive enough they can't refuse. And when Harbor Point owns the mortgage, you'll have the right to collect the debt, modify the terms, or foreclose. You'll own your son's house debt. Exactly. Richard leaned back in his chair. Melissa, I want to make sure you understand what this means. Once you own this mortgage, you have significant power over their lives. You could forgive the debt. You could restructure it. You could foreclose and evict them. I know. What are you planning to do? I met his eyes. I'm planning to teach them a lesson about respect, about consequences, about what happens when you throw away someone who loves you. And after the lesson, I was quiet for a moment. I don't know yet. I'll decide that when I see if they're capable of learning. Richard nodded. All right. I'll contact Olympic National Bank today. Make the offer. If they accept, we could close by November 10th. Make it happen. November 6th, 2024. Richard called. Olympic National Bank accepted our offer, $265,000 7-day close. They were thrilled to get it off their books so quickly. We're closing on November 10th. My heart started racing. They agreed. Signed the preliminary agreement this morning. Harbor Point Investments will own the mortgage by Monday. Will Eugene and Nancy be notified? Not until after the close. Standard practice. The bank will send them a letter saying their mortgage has been sold to Harbor Point Investments, LLC, and all future payments should be directed to our office. They'll have no idea it's me. Not unless they do some very deep digging. And even then, the LLC structure protects you. Your name appears nowhere on any documents. I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in months. Power, control, justice. Thank you, Richard. The property sales are moving forward too, he said. We have solid offers on 4 of the 5 parcels we listed. Total $1,022,000. We should close on those between November 18th and November 20th. Over $1 million. Within 2 weeks. You're doing great, Melissa, Richard said. You're protecting yourself and securing your future. That's smart, not vindictive. After we hung up, I sat on the bed in my hotel room. I was still at the Silver Cloud, finding comfort in the clean sheets and working water pressure, and thought about what was happening. In 4 days, I would own Eugene and Nancy's mortgage. They would owe me $314,500. The house they'd stolen from me, I would own their debt on it. The poetic justice was almost overwhelming. November 12th, 2024. The mortgage purchase had closed smoothly. Harbor Point Investments, LLC, now owned the loan on 847 Oakwood Drive. Eugene and Nancy had been sent notification letters on November 11th. They'd probably received them yesterday. I wondered what they'd thought when they saw Harbor Point Investments instead of Olympic National Bank. Probably just confusion. Probably just annoyance. They had no idea. But I wasn't satisfied yet. I needed one more thing. I needed them to know, really know that I was okay. Better than okay. Thriving. I needed them to see what they'd thrown away. I called Richard. I want to buy a penthouse. A penthouse? Something visible. Something they can't ignore. Summit Tower has units available, right? Summit Tower, Melissa. Those penthouses start at $1.6 million. I know. I looked at the listings. Unit 3804 is on the market for $1.68 million. I want it. Silence on the line. Then, you want to buy a $1.68 million penthouse to prove a point? No, I said. I want to buy it because I deserve it. Because I spent 45 years living modestly, saving every penny, putting everyone else first. And because it's time I lived somewhere beautiful. The message to your son is just a bonus, Richard said dryly. Maybe, he sighed. All right, let's talk financing. You have $67,430 liquid right now. The property sales will add another $1,022,000 by November 20th. That's $1,089,430 total. If you put down $850,000, you'd need to finance $830,000. Can Harbor Point Investments finance my purchase? Technically, yes. We could structure it as an internal loan. The LLC lends you the money, you pay it back with interest. It's legal, it's clean, and it gives you significant tax advantages. What's the monthly payment on $830,000? At current rates, about 5.2%, you're looking at roughly $4,580 per month. I can afford that. The lease payments from the storage facility and cell tower parcels brought in $4,200 a month. Plus, I'd still have the remaining 7 properties appreciating in value. When do you want to do this? Now, today. I want to close by Thanksgiving. Melissa. Richard, please. I need this. I need to live somewhere that's mine. That's beautiful. That's safe. I can't stay in a hotel forever. All right, he said. Let me call the listing agent. We'll make an offer today. November 25th, 2024. 2 days before Thanksgiving. I stood in the empty living room of Unit 3804 Summit Tower and looked out at the view. 38 floors up. Floor-to-ceiling windows spanning 2 walls. Puget Sound sparkling in the late autumn sun. Ferries crossing the water. The Olympic Mountains white-capped and majestic in the distance. Downtown Seattle spread below me like a gift. The purchase had closed this morning. I'd signed the papers in Richard's office, written a check for $850,000 from the property sale proceeds. The mortgage for the remaining $830,000 had been handled internally through Harbor Point Investments. And now this was mine. 2,400 square feet. 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. Gourmet kitchen with stainless steel appliances. Master suite with a walk-in closet bigger than the motel room I'd lived in. A terrace overlooking the city. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was everything I'd never allowed myself to want. I'd hired an interior designer, Jennifer Walsh, recommended by Richard's wife. I'd given her a budget of $65,000 in 3 weeks. I want understated luxury, I'd told her. I want elegant, not flashy. I want people to walk in here and know that the woman who lives here has class resources and excellent taste. Jennifer had understood immediately. I know exactly what you need. Now, as I walked through the empty space, I could picture what it would become. The cream leather sofa she'd shown me, the glass and steel coffee table, the original Seattle artwork, Pike Place Market at dawn, the Space Needle at night, the soft lighting that would make everything glow. I walked out onto the terrace. The air was cold but fresh, clean. I could hear the city humming below, but up here it was peaceful. For the first time since Benjamin died, I felt like I could breathe. My phone rang. Richard. Congratulations on your new home, he said. How does it feel? Surreal, I admitted. 3 months ago I was living in a $47 a night motel. Now I'm standing in a penthouse that costs more than most houses. You deserve it, Melissa. You've earned it. There's one more thing I need, I said. Sai said. What's that? I need Eugene and Nancy to know where I live. Not directly, I'm not ready for that yet. But I need them to find out. I need the word to spread. Richard was quiet for a moment. What did you have in mind? Rumors. Coincidences. Someone mentions seeing me here. Someone else confirms it. Until they start asking questions. You want to plant breadcrumbs. Exactly. I might know some people who could help with that, Richard said. Give me a few days. After we hung up, I stood on the terrace watching the sun set over the Olympic Mountains. The sky turned pink, then orange, then deep purple. Somewhere in this city, Eugene and Nancy were struggling, behind on their mortgage, drowning in debt, facing foreclosure by a company they'd never heard of. And they had no idea that company was me. They had no idea I was standing in a penthouse worth $1.68 million looking out over the city where they'd thrown me away. They had no idea what was coming. But they would. Soon. December 6th, 2024, Richard had found his people. They were actors from a small theater company in Capitol Hill. Professional, discreet, very good at improvisation. The first encounter was at a gas station on 85th and Aurora Avenue. Eugene stopped there every Thursday around 6 p.m. to fill up his truck. David Torres had documented his patterns. The actor's name was James. 58 years old, gray hair, trustworthy face. He'd been briefed on exactly what to say. According to James's report, which David Torres provided the next day, here's what happened. Eugene was pumping gas when James walked up. Ryan Bennett. Eugene looked up, confused. It's Eugene, but yeah. Oh, sorry, I must have been thinking of someone else. I'm James Morrison. I used to work with your dad at the Department of Transportation. I'm so sorry about Benjamin. He was a good man. Eugene's face softened. Thank you. Yeah, it's been tough. How's your mother doing? Lori? No, Melissa, right? I heard she moved. Must be hard for her leaving that house after so many years. She's fine. Doing okay. That's good. You know, funny thing, I ran into someone who said they saw her at Summit Tower downtown. You know those new luxury condos? But that can't be right. Those penthouses go for what, $2 million? James laughed like it was absurd. Eugene's face went white. Summit Tower. Must have been someone who looked like her. No way Melissa could afford that, right? Anyway, great seeing you, Eugene. Take care. James walked away, got in his car, and drove off. According to David, Eugene stood frozen at the pump for a full minute before getting back in his truck. Seed planted, December 10th, 2024. The second encounter was at Whole Foods in Roosevelt. Nancy shopped there on Tuesday afternoons. Another pattern David had documented. The actress was named Catherine. Mid-40s, friendly face, excellent at seeming genuine. She accidentally bumped into Nancy in the produce section. Oh, I'm so sorry. Wait, Nancy Bennett. Nancy looked confused. Yes. Catherine Mitchell. We met at that marketing conference last year. Tech Vista, right? Oh yeah, hi. Nancy clearly didn't remember her, but was being polite. How are you? Oh my goodness, you're pregnant. Congratulations. Thank you. Listen, random question, is your mother-in-law, Melissa, older woman, gray hair, really sweet? Nancy's expression cooled. Why? I think I saw her last week at Summit Tower. I have a friend who lives there. She was in the lobby wearing this gorgeous Burberry coat getting into a Tesla, but I wasn't sure if it was her. Nancy stared. Summit Tower. Yeah, the luxury building downtown penthouses are like $2 million. But it couldn't have been her, right? I must be thinking of someone else. Must be, Nancy said faintly. Catherine smiled. Anyway, great seeing you. Good luck with the baby. She walked away, leaving Nancy standing in the produce section, staring at nothing. According to David's surveillance, Nancy stood there for 3 full minutes before abandoning her shopping cart and leaving the store. December 14th, 2024. The third encounter was at a restaurant called Revel in Fremont. Eugene and Nancy went there sometimes for lunch, one of the few cheap places they could still afford. They were splitting an entree to save money. The waiter, another actor we'd hired, approached their table. Excuse me, he said. I don't mean to intrude, but are you related to Melissa Bennett? Both of them froze. Why? Eugene asked. She was here last week with a group of friends. Such a lovely woman. She mentioned she had a son named Eugene. I thought maybe... Anyway, she was so generous. Left a $100 tip on a $60 bill. Just wanted to say if you're related, you have a wonderful mother. He walked away before they could respond. According to the waiter, they didn't finish their meal. They paid and left within 5 minutes. December 16th, 2024. David Torres called me. They're investigating you. What goal? Eugene has made 7 phone calls in the past 3 days asking people if they've seen you. Nancy searched your name on Facebook, Instagram, and Google. They're trying to figure out if the rumors are true. What are they finding? Nothing. You don't have social media. Your name isn't on any property records because everything's in the LLC. They're hitting dead ends, which is probably making them more suspicious. Good. There's something else, David said. They're fighting. I had someone watching the house last night. They had a screaming match in the driveway at 11 p.m. Neighbors definitely heard. What were they fighting about? Money? Nancy was yelling about the mortgage. Eugene was yelling about the Mercedes. It went on for 20 minutes. I felt a twinge of something. Not quite guilt, but something close to it. "They're falling apart," David said quietly. "The financial pressure, the pregnancy, and now these rumors about you. They're cracking." "Let me know if anything else happens," I said. After we hung up, I stood at my penthouse windows looking out at the city. Down there somewhere, Eugene and Nancy were spiraling, fighting, desperate. And they were about to get even more desperate, because tomorrow they'd receive a letter that would change everything.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.